Hi there. Welcome to This Leader. I'm Claire Laughlin, and I'm so glad you're here. My mom has this beautiful baby square grand piano, and it's been in our family for a couple generations. It's a stunning instrument. It was there in my home when I was growing up, and this is really a special piece. But anyway, she started looking for a new home for this beautiful piano. So FYI, if you are looking for a baby square grand piano, this is a doozy. And this needs a wonderful next chapter. So let me know if you're in the if you're in the market for a new piano. But anyway, knowing that this piano is going to go away, I wanted to sit down and play it one more time because I used to play as a kid. I spent hours at that piano. My friends and I would, oh my gosh, I had a couple of friends that were wonderful musicians and they would play and play, and I had learned a little piano and whatever. So I decided to sit down, put my hands on the keys, try to play it one more time, and it sounded awful. It was just wrong. It was just off. Anyone who knows anything about musical instruments knows this. They're probably laughing right now because, of course, it didn't sound right. It hasn't been played for years. I guess I'm not sure I said that, but nobody really plays this piano, right? So it hasn't been played for years. And a piano that isn't played is going to go out of tune, right? This is not news to musicians. But anyway, I guess I just didn't expect it. And I had this picture in my head. I was going to sit down and I was going to play a little. I think one of the first things I learned was the entertainer. So I kind of still remember that. It did not sound at all like I expected it. So here's the thing I should have remembered: instruments don't stay in tune, they drift all on their own. If it's a guitar, the strings stretch, right? The wood shifts with the temperature. Time does what time does. And a perfectly good instrument slides quietly out of tune. And you don't have to do anything wrong for that to happen. In fact, you just have to do nothing. So let's talk about your team. Let's just name it. The natural direction of almost anything is toward a little bit of disorder, a little bit of chaos. Scientists have a fancy word for this, entropy, but you and I probably don't need the physics lesson behind that because we've probably lived this. So think about it. Unless you're a special kind of unicorn, you can probably imagine things that just get out of order. Your sock drawer, okay? Your email inbox, go take a look at that. The junk drawer in the kitchen that you organized so beautifully one Sunday in a fit of inspiration that's now somehow, I don't know, full of takeout plasticware and dead batteries and one mysterious key that you have no idea what it's for. Nobody decided to mess up the drawer. It just drifted. And my friend, the same thing is true of a team. You may have already noticed this, even if you couldn't quite name it. But teams, people, without regular maintenance and attention, relationships on a team can grow a little stale, a little less warm, a little less energizing. That's not always the case. But man, when we get busy and the pressure rises, the spark you used to feel in a really good meeting, I don't know, can get less sparky. Goals on your team that were once crisp and exciting, without regular maintenance, they go soft and fuzzy. Like you can sort of remember what you were working toward, but nobody could really name it out loud with any conviction. So this is what happens, right? Little agreements about how you treat each other can subtly erode. One skipped commitment, one eye roll, one, well, that's just how she is at a time. Any of those kinds of things. And I really want to say this out loud. This is not a sign that something is wrong with you or with your people, with your team at all. It's just what happens, especially now because this world we're living in, right? We move fast. Demands are constant. The pings never stop. Most of us are running a 24/7, always on, back to back kind of life in a sense. And in that environment, drift accelerates. So you end up with a team that on paper looks fine. We're getting stuff done. We show up, work gets done. There's no emergencies. It's all good. Nothing is dramatically falling apart. But underneath, you as the team leader, it could be a little better. It's just a little out of tune. That's all. It's just a little out of tune. So today, I want to talk about how to do what I call a team reset. Now, before we go any further, I want to say something about that word reset, because some of you, when I say the word reset, you're picturing exactly what I just described, like a team that used to be, humming along and has quietly slipped out of tune. That's a real situation. That might be where you are. You might remember very clearly a time when your team was really operating at a high level and things have just, I don't know, they've just gotten a little soft. Okay. But for others of you out there, the word reset might not feel quite right because maybe you've never really set your team. So, let's get our vocabulary right. Resetting a team doesn't necessarily mean that you've had this perfectly operating team in the past and you're coming back to that same standard. Honestly, I have to admit, a lot of teams I work with have never really stopped to assess or define what a finely tuned team would look like in the first place. Many teams just sort of evolve. They don't necessarily sit down purposefully to build a foundation. So they haven't talked expressly about how they want to be together or why they're doing this work or what they're actually focused on and what they're working toward collectively, right? They've mostly been running on improvisation and good intentions and making the most of whatever is most pressing at the moment. Deploying people to do their roles and move forward, but without necessarily sitting down and saying, hey, how can we do our best together? How can we work at our best? Okay. So when I say the word reset for our purposes here today, what I really mean is something much simpler. It means a reset being sort of the moment when you, as the leader, you decide to pivot and you decide, okay, we're going to be more purposeful about how we work as a team starting now. It might mean tuning something that has drifted quite a little out of tune, or it might mean tuning something that was never expressly tuned to begin with. Either way, the three moves we're going to talk about, same three moves, okay? Same beautiful outcome, either way. So if the word reset feels a little funny because you're thinking, wait, reset to what? We've never had it before. Don't get hung up on it. You're not late to the party. You're here, and here is exactly where it starts. So, how do we do it? How do you do this reset of a team? How do you bring the team back into tune? Or how do you be purposeful about forging a way forward that has more clarity, more consistency, more commitment behind it? So I'm going to give you these 3 R's. You know I love a good alliteration. And these are simple to remember, and they work in this order: reclaim, revive, and refocus. You're going to reclaim your standards. That means recommitting to who you're going to be together. You're going to revive your purpose and your relationships, which means reconnecting to why you're doing this and recommitting to or reconnecting with each other. And you're going to refocus your energy. You're going to get crystal clear on what matters most right now. Reclaim, revive, and refocus. Let's take those one at a time. Okay, reclaim. Let's start there. To reclaim anything, you have to start with a decision, a commitment. So before any tool, before any exercise, I want you to do something almost embarrassingly simple. I want you to declare your intent out loud to your team. Tell your team your why. So exactly what you say depends a little on where you're starting. Like if your team has been together for a while and you know that there's just something more for this team, then it might sound like this, like, oh, we're a good team. You might turn to your team and declare your intent by saying, we're a good team. We're a solid team. And I believe we can be even better. Okay? Simple. If your team is new or you've never really sat down and done this kind of work together, it might sound like this. It might sound like, hey, we've been a team on paper for a while, but we've never really stopped to talk about how we want to be together. And I want to do that because I think we're capable of something really amazing here. And I want us to build it on purpose. Different words, same move though. You're basically just naming out loud that something is going to shift and that the shift is an investment. It's not a punishment. It's not because anything is wrong. It's because you're just going to move forward differently. Okay. And don't underestimate what happens in a room when a leader steps up, makes that kind of a claim, and means it. You're going to give the team permission and some encouragement to want more, to be more. And you're signaling that you see them and you believe in this team. And while we're here, let me name something straight up. If your team has been operating in one way for a long time, and you walk in and you say, hey, we're going to start doing things a little different. We're going to change up our meetings and we're going to build some agreements and talk about our why. Some of your people are going to look at you like you've sprouted a second head. Okay. That's just true. There might be some eye rolling. There might be for you and them a little bit of this, oh, wow, this feels weird. That is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's not at all. In fact, it's probably a sign you're doing it right. And it's not a reason to stop. It's just a sign that you're doing something new. And anything new is uncomfortable before it's normal. So declaring your intent up front is how you take some of the awkwardness out of the situation because you're naming the change instead of just springing it on people. Tell them what to expect. Tell them what's coming. And once you've declared your intent, then we get down to the work of reclaiming. Okay. So reclaiming, in our words for today, is about building or rebuilding your standards. And the best way I know how to do that is something I call team agreements. So here's how it works. You get your team together and you ask them to think about a time that they experienced truly great teamwork. Doesn't have to be at this current job, could be a sports team, a volunteer group, another role, whatever, project team from years ago. Just have them imagine a team that felt like it really worked, that hummed along, right? And then ask two questions. Number one, what did your team members, at that time, what did they do? How did they behave? What did they actually do that made it so good? And number two, this is just as important, what did they not do? What behaviors were off the table? Okay. And then you listen, you write it all down. And what you'll find is that people know. They know exactly what great looks like. All this will come pouring out. You don't have to tell them. They have experiences like this. You'll hear things like this, about behaviors of a high functioning team. Well, people did what they said they would do. They planned their work. They spoke up for their needs instead of silently seething. They solved problems proactively. They helped each other. They assumed positive intent, like they gave each other the benefit of the doubt. They had fun together. They cared. They listened to understand. These are the kinds of things you're going to hear. And then when you get to the second question, what didn't they do? You'll hear other things like, well, they didn't pass the buck. They didn't blame each other. They didn't let deadlines just slip with a shrug and an excuse. They weren't haphazard about their work. They didn't ruminate or play the martyr. They didn't gossip or use, the Band-Aid approach, like slapping a quick fix on something and walking away. And they didn't assign negative motives to each other. So these lists, especially the good list, what teams do, that list becomes the basis for your set of team agreements. It's not rules that you imposed as the leader. It's agreements that team members wrote themselves based on their own implicit expectations of what it means to be part of a great team. And that's the magic. People will hold themselves and each other to a standard that they helped create in a way they'll never do for a standard that was just handed down to them. So let me share one more enhancement that you can add. Patrick Lencioni, in his work with the Table Group, has this beautiful model that he outlined in his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And you might have seen the model. It's a pyramid. And at the base of that pyramid is one thing that every high-performing team must have, which is trust. He talks about it as the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So he says that at the base is the absence of trust. That's the dysfunction. But I like to flip those things over into the positive. So I always say trust is the foundation of a high-functioning team. High-performing teams have trust. Now, how do you build trust? You don't just have it. You have to build it through behaviors. Imagine a pyramid. At the bottom is trust. That's a foundation. It's very important. Above that is healthy and effective conflict. So if we have trust, we can have healthy and effective conflict. And by the way, healthy and effective conflict actually often helps build trust. But anyway, that's the next step up on the pyramid is that healthy and effective conflict. And out of that one comes a real commitment, which fuels accountability. And finally, at the top of the pyramid is results. All highly effective teams have trust at the foundation, and they are built to achieve real results. And don't forget, real trust isn't built by just one-off things like a ropes course or a trust fall. It's not built that way. Trust is built when behavior is reliably respectful and consistent, when people do what they say they're going to do, when agreements hold. And so when you make clear team agreements, you are literally building your solid operating foundation. You're building clarity of expectation so that people can then build trust even more easily. And this is where a lot of leaders don't follow through, and it's a problem. And I say this with love, but I've done this myself. But they have this one team meeting, they build a great set of agreements, and everybody feels good. And then they forget about it. Not good, because then 6 weeks later, the team is right back out of tune. So hear me when I say this. Standards are not a one and done. You have to remember those standards or agreements. You have to live them. You have to reinforce them. So how do you do it? Well, at a minimum, you need to quickly review these agreements at the start of meetings for a while. It takes just a few minutes, but do it consistently, especially at first. And build in little feedback loops for check-ins, like say, how are we doing on our agreements? Check in, talk about the agreements at the beginning of the meeting. At the end of the meeting, say, how did we do with our agreements, right? And when you see someone behaving in alignment with the agreements in a meeting or out of a meeting, call it out, celebrate the achievement. Speak to it, demonstrate that you notice. And when somebody violates one of the agreements, because they will, changing a habit takes some practice. Just address it quickly and kindly. Support better behavior. Don't let it slide, and don't make it a federal case. Just gently turn the peg a little. Bring that behavior back into tune. And if a violation keeps happening, then take it seriously and deal with it directly. That's part of the leadership job. So that is reclaim. You declare your intent. You build team agreements together, and you keep them alive. So reclaiming is all about setting those clear standards. And there's a point in time, you put a stake in the ground and say, these are our new agreements. Okay, revive. This is the second R. Reclaim was about how you're going to behave. Revive is about heart. It's about reconnecting to two things that drift away faster than anything else, your purpose and your relationships. So let's start with purpose. This is your why. This is your driving motivation. And here's a truth I have come to believe down to my bones. Sharing and knowing your why is the essence of leadership. So think about it. We will comply with people who hold authority over us. We kind of have to. They sign our time cards, right? But we don't necessarily or voluntarily follow those leaders. But what about those leaders, when you think about it, those ones that we do admire and we willingly follow? Who are they? We tend to willingly follow people who connect us to something that we care about, to shared values, to a purpose that means something. Okay, so there's a definition of leadership that I just adore, and it's from Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner in their book, The Leadership Challenge. They say that leadership is, quote, the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations. So just think about that for a minute. The art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations. When have you wanted to struggle? When have you wanted to struggle for a shared aspiration, right? To want to struggle. Isn't that something? It's not to want to comply. It's not to merely cooperate. It's to want to struggle, to lean into hard things. That, my friend, is what having a clear and compelling purpose does. When you've got a shared purpose that is meaningful to the people that are in pursuit of that purpose, we're willing to struggle. We are willing to stay the extra hours, to go the extra mile, to do the extra work because it matters to us. It matters in our hearts, right? And when a team is out of tune or it's never really been tuned, I can almost promise you that purpose is fuzzy. Okay. So, how do you bring this purpose to life? A team should have a clear purpose. So, I'm going to give you one little format. It's very easy. Think about it this way: two, our team is here to contribute something so that we have some kind of impact. So, there's just two parts: two, contribution, so that impact. Again, your contribution, what you actually do. We are here to do what? So that, why? What is the impact? Why does it matter? My why, I'm going to just give you mine here so you can hear it. Okay. My why is to support leaders in creating happy, highly productive workplaces. That's what I'm here to do. That's what I do. That's the what. So that, why? What's the impact I'm trying to make? The impact is so that they can achieve their true potential, make a bigger impact, and create a better experience of work for everyone. I like to say, I'm here to support leaders in creating happy, highly productive workplaces so that they can achieve their true potential, make a bigger impact, and create a better experience of work for everyone. And also, just by the way, I like to add a little caveat at the end, which is because no one deserves to work in a dysfunctional workplace, having been that person at one time. So start with something simple, right? My purpose is to what? What is the specific contribution that your team is there to make? So that what? What is the impact that you hope to have? Make it inspirational. So this originally sort of came out of Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. He wrote this book, Start With Why. It's an older book, but it's a really good book. If you haven't read it, it's definitely should be on your reading list. But his why is something like this: to inspire people to do the things that inspire them. So you can word your why in a way that's meaningful to you, but great leaders know their why. They know their core purpose. They know why they're going out into the arena and leading. And I really, really encourage you to consider what your compelling purpose is on a personal level, but then also for your team. What is your team level purpose? Like, think about it. Why does your team exist? What do you contribute? And what impact do you hope to make? Don't make this a corporate mission statement. That is not what we're here to do. And don't worry about how anyone else is going to feel about this. You don't have to post this on your website just yet. Just make this meaningful and inspirational to your team. So I'll give you an example. I had a water company that was working on their why statement. Their first version, when I asked them to create this, was, "What's your why?" I said. And they said, "Well, we're here to deliver water to our community," which is true. And that's good. Clear, simple. But then I said, "Why does that matter?" And they said, "Well, because everybody needs water." I was like, "Yeah, I know, but let's push it. Why does that matter? What is the why?" Imagine your community when they can't get water. Okay, think about it for a minute. So in the end, they had a statement that was something like this: "Our why is to deliver fresh water to our community 24/7 so that all of our residents can thrive and live healthy lives." Okay, so I love that. They sort of push the envelope a little bit and they really connect with, we are here for a reason that matters. Honestly, I don't think you're making that up. Imagine this. You've got a community without water. That's a very bad thing. You don't want that to happen. So don't oversimplify it. A lot of people go into this and they think, well, what I do is no big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Whatever you're doing, it is a big deal. So be inspirational about it. Michael Hyatt says, focus on your why and you won't lose your way. And I love that. I have to agree. A team that knows why it's all rowing, that team can keep going through almost any storm and they move a lot faster. That was a lot, but that's purpose. The second half of revive, I said, is relationships. So you want to rekindle those relationships or you want to kindle them for the first time. You want to support healthy relationships. And it's a commitment. This is simply taking the time to actually and genuinely get to know each other, because that's the connective tissue that, frankly, it only goes so deep on its own. You know this. Work relationships can stay at a somewhat surfacey level for years or decades if we don't purposefully find ways to deepen them. And honestly, relationships are being built all the time. So this is not a one and done activity. But I do know that it's important to set aside specific time to go deeper and to see each other in new and different ways. And most teams will not do that unless they create a specific event for this purpose. I could give you a dozen ways that you could do this, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So I'm going to give you just a couple of suggestions and encourage you to pick one. One thing you can do is open your meetings with a real check in kind of question. Something interesting and different. Not just, hey, how's everybody doing? Okay, let's get to business, but an actual question that lets people show up as just a little fuller version of themselves. I was in an all hands meeting just the other day, and I had people go around and share the answer to this one. Tell me one great piece of advice that you didn't take but wish you did. That was a fun one. So just come up with an interesting, different question. That's an easy way to just keep that spark going. At many of the team events I lead, I ask team members to just share personal histories. A few basics: where you grew up, whether you have siblings, where you are in the birth order, a formative moment, or something about your childhood that shaped who you are today. Those are so wonderful. When I go into a room and I really ask people to do that exercise, they'll often remember it years and years later and tell me that it was a real turning point for their team. You could also, of course, do a team assessment. Something like the Working Genius. You've heard me talk about that many times. It's one of my favorites because it helps people understand not just what energizes them and brings them joy, but also what drains them and how they can be more productive at work. So whatever you pick, keep it light, keep it consistent, protect that time to have some relationship building, because relationships, just like the piano I talked about at the beginning, can get out of tune over time. Friends, we're at the third R, refocus. Now you've reclaimed your standards, or you've built them or you've reclaimed them, one of the two. You've revived your purpose, you've sort of brushed it off and sharpened it up, and you've revived relationships by doubling down on trust-building activities. Refocus is about taking all that good energy and pointing it toward a shared goal, bringing your full attention back to what matters most right now. Because again, here's what happens when a team drifts or when a team just hasn't stopped lately to align on goals. Goals get fuzzy. How do you know if this is a challenge? Test it. Go around to your team members independently and just pull them aside and say, hey, what's the single most important thing that we're working toward this quarter? See what kind of answers you get. My guess is that you'll either get blank looks or a lot of different versions of your goals. Okay, so bringing clarity to goals is really, really important. So it starts with getting clear, but it also involves bringing some urgency to goal achievement. And the simplest way I know to create urgency is to shorten your time horizon. That doesn't necessarily mean do the same amount of work in less time. It means bring your time horizon in closer and make a sub goal that you're working hard towards. So think about it this way: 12-month goals. Those are more like a vision in my mind. And that is important, but it can kind of feel, comfortable. Like, yeah, we've got a year. We can get that done. There's always next month. But now compare that to something that you feel you have to do in a week. Okay, that's urgency. That's the difference. Or let's say you have a 2-week sprint. That has teeth. So I like to nest my goals, right? So for example, you hold that 12-month vision. What are we going to accomplish this year? Then you break that down into quarters, because 3-month goals are much more concrete than a 12-month vision. And you feed those 3 months goals with 1 month goals or short 1 to 2 week sprints with real tangible deliverables. Boy, that is going to give you a sense of momentum, urgency, and progress. The long horizon, make sure that you stay moving in the right direction. The short horizon provides urgency and momentum. You need both. And then, this is also important, you cascade your goals, okay? Your organization has longer term strategic goals. Your department's actual goals sort of ladder up to those, and each person's goals should ladder up to the department goals. So every single person can see the line, like this bright, clear line from the thing on their to-do list all the way up to the organizational goals. And that's what makes work feel like it matters. It makes people feel like they're rowing in the same direction. And the sense of progress is really good. It helps people change from this sort of task mode into accomplishment mode. Stephen Covey said, "Stop setting goals. Goals are pure fantasy unless you have a specific plan to achieve them." So what's he saying here? He's saying don't kid yourself that having a goal, like a long-term goal, for example, is the same as achieving the goal. I see that as have that long-term vision, break it into the shorter-term sprints, and because that's kind of the plan to get there, and then chip away at the plan. You're going to clarify those goals, right? You're going to translate those into short-term milestones and deliverables. And then, of course, tasks, because you got to get those tasks on your calendar. Goals, they don't live in a vision document. They live in your actions that you take week to week. Okay? And here's my favorite part. When you hit one of those goals, when you hit a milestone, when you deliver a deliverable, celebrate it. Okay? I did a whole episode on this quite some time ago now, episode 5, Energize Your Team. And I talked about a wonderful piece of research from Teresa Amabile, who's a Harvard professor who wrote a book called The Progress Principle. She and her team studied thousands and thousands of daily diary entries from real employees who were tracking what was meaningful in their jobs. And what they found was the single biggest driver of motivation and a good feeling at work. It wasn't a raise, it wasn't recognition from the top. It was the feeling of making progress doing meaningful work. Okay? Progress doing meaningful work, even small progress and small wins. So when you refocus, when you set those short, clear goals and you actually celebrate hitting the milestones, you're not just being nice, you're tapping into one of the most powerful motivational forces that we know about. You're giving your team the felt experience of moving forward together in meaningful work. And nothing pulls a team back into tune faster than that. Okay, so I've been doing this long enough to know that some of you are thinking, okay, Claire, sounds lovely, but this is a lot of work to do before we get to the work. I know. Some of you are saying, I barely have time to breathe, and now you want me to run agreement building exercises and wise statements and cascading goals. When am I going to do this? And I hear you. I really do. And I want to answer this honestly because it's fair. It's fair. But here's the reframe I want to share with you. This is the work. The clarity, the trust, the shared purpose, the goals. That's not the warm-up act before the real work. That is the foundation that the real work stands on. A team that's in tune moves faster, solves its own problems, needs less of your intervention, needs less of your time, right? An out-of-tune team is expensive. It just hides the cost in friction, rework, quiet disengagement, churn, and the fires you spend all day putting out. All that takes time too. All right. So again, I talked about this back in episode 5. When you invest in resetting your team, you actually start getting your time back. Fires start preventing themselves. People reach out to each other instead of always coming to you. So this reset of your team should not feel like one more thing on your plate. I know it will at first, okay? But if you do this, it will be the thing that eventually clears your plate or at least gives you more space on your plate. And it's a gift to every single person on your team, including you. So here's the truth said plainly. Tending to your team is your job as a leader, right? Just like the piano doesn't tune itself, you need to jump in and tune your team all along the way. So you're the one for the job. You got this. And I'm here with you all the way. So let me leave you with this. You don't have to do all three of these things tomorrow. That's not the assignment. If there's an assignment at all, it's simply this: make a decision to pivot and be purposeful. Make a decision to sit down and say, okay, that's it. I'm going to get real clarity on my team. That's what we're going to do. And if you notice that your team has quietly slipped out of tune, or it could just be better than it is right now, you can just look around and go like, hey, we could do this better. Our communication could be easier. Our relationships could be stronger. Our purpose could be clearer. Okay, great. That's the time. Even if you just simply haven't done a team offsite for a while, then I highly encourage you to pause and do something about it. So pick one of the 3 R's. You pick one. Maybe this week you declare your intent to bring the team together and you start building some team agreements. Maybe you open your next meeting by sharing your personal why and asking your team to think about theirs. Maybe you sit down with your team and you work on the goal and a time horizon so that you bring some urgency and clarity to the process. Pick one thing. And listen, if you need help, this is what I do day in and day out. Several times a month, I'm in real workplaces with real teams doing exactly this work. Reclaim, revive, refocus. I work with teams to help them build their agreements and sharpen their focus and break down their goals and connect to each other on a deeper, more profound level. And it might surprise you, but guess what? All three of these R's can be tackled in one well-planned, focused day. It's the one-day team reset, and I love that day, and I would be thrilled if you want to work together. So if it sounds like something you want for your team, reach out and schedule a consultation with me, and we'll talk about what your team needs and whether we can find a way to work together. Because tuning up your team might be some of the most important work you do all year. So that's it for today, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, go lead the way.